needs a plus to come together and to raise a voice. There are ties that must be severed to rise above the noise. Seize the day, seize the day, seize the day. All your hopes and dreams will surely fade away if you don't seize the day, seize the day.
Any Spanish cheese? Is that all? Sorry.
Thank you, and hello and good evening, everyone, and welcome back to ayematters. Our broadcasting hiatus has now ended, and no more votes, no more bells, hoping like we endured at Westminster, or whips instructions to get along to vote as quickly as we could. Sometimes we maybe have 3 or 4 votes in a night, and it was a constant disruption while Martyn and I were sitting at Westminster, and we thank people for their forbearance and putting up with us. However, we now have the ability, in essence, to control our own destination, our own issues here at the broadcasting hub, the centre of the universe in Denny and Dunnipace in the Falkirk area, and the universe and, of course, all of its surroundings. So we resume in a much more hospitable place, I would say, with good people, and where we all have learned to discuss issues around the area, and in a manner which we all hopefully we can disagree, but without being disagreeable with what we're actually doing. So with that thought in mind, our ayematters is not just about a natter, it's about matters that matter to people, and we purposefully aim to promote the community inclusion, our community horizontal community inclusion, where everybody has a say whenever they like to come along and talk about what their issue is. So we like to think that we're going to provide that voice and that ear to highlight issues within the local, the national, and of course international community. And as everyone knows, if you want to change the world, you get busy in your own little corner. And we're very fortunate here tonight having the ladies from Waspi to do exactly what I've just said. They've got busy in their own little corner. So without any further ado, I'm going to hand you over to my colleague, Martyn Day, who's now going to start the proceedings with the ladies and tell us a wee bit about where we are and what we've been doing in the past, Martyn.
Well, this is our first excursion outside the bowels of Westminster for doing a live stream, and it's fair to say we've had a few technical issues getting started tonight. However, hopefully these get ironed out. So grateful for any comments in the chat as to audio qualities, because although we know audio is going out, for some reason we're not able to monitor it. So we will obviously play back afterwards and make some assessments ourselves, but do let us know. And I am just trying to get logged in so I can play some other bits of footage. On the banner side, could you press the first video after the song? Hang on, I'll go and just...
Meanwhile, back at the ranch, it's actually not that much different from what happened at Westminster.
I know this is an issue of huge concern to many women, which has spanned multiple parliaments. Like so many other problems that we have inherited from the party opposite, this is something which the previous government should have dealt with. Instead, they kicked the can down the road and left us to pick up the pieces. But today, we deal with it head on. My honourable friend, the Pensions Minister, and I have given the Ombudsman's report serious consideration and looked in detail at the findings and at information and advice provided by the department, which was not available to us before coming into government. The Ombudsman looked at 6 cases. He found that the department provided adequate and accurate information on changes to the state pension age between 1995 and 2004, including through leaflets, pensions education campaigns, and on its website. However, decisions made between 2005 and 2007 led to a 28-month delay in sending out letters to women born in the 1950s. The Ombudsman says these delays did not result in the women suffering direct financial loss, but they were maladministration. We accept that the 28-month delay in sending out letters was maladministration, and on behalf of the government, I apologise. This government is determined to learn all the lessons from what went wrong, and I'll say more about this in a moment. We also agree that the women suffered no direct financial loss because of the maladministration.
Down to London. Sorry.
I don't know. Which video just played?
You go first.
God response. No.
You want to go first, then?
Yes, okay.
I'm not sure if we're going or not.
We are, and we've just finished the Liz Kendall video, which is difficult to monitor what's happening without the audio. So that was Liz, which we've all heard, which she said live at the time in December. So.
Okay, well, we'll just kind of restart again, and I'll just go back over what I said. If the ladies would like to introduce themselves, maybe starting with yourself then, Anne, give us a bit of background on where Waspi started from, how it came about, and why you're still campaigning to this day.
My name's Anne Campbell, and I first heard about the pension changes when, in fact, when John was the MP for Falkirk, held a public meeting. And this was in November 2015, and I was due to retire in 2016. And that was the very first time I had heard that I would not retire at 60. I was absolutely flabbergasted, and there was a group of women met up, and we decided that we were going to go down to the very first demo in London. And we went down in June, and there was 2,000 or 3,000 at that demo, and we formed the Falkirk local Waspi group as part of the national Waspi campaign. I've been on several demonstrations in England and in Scotland, organised a rally at the Falkirk Kelpies at the lake for people in the central Scotland district. We lettered, I took part in the letters going to the DWP about the complaints, and then they decided to close a lot of the cases, which meant I never got as far as the PSO. We still wrote, we still demonstrated, and hopefully keep waiting for the recommendations to come back, which took a long, long time. And
yeah.
And now the PSO put forward recommendations because we were validated. We always said it was maladministration, and DWP kept saying no, it wasn't. It was a court case, a lot of to and fro, and then eventually the PSO came back and said yes, it was maladministration, and they made a recommendation for compensation between 1,000 and 2,900, which is disappointing considering everybody had lost 6 years pension.
Yeah, it's coming for this.
Although the Waspi ask was never to go back to 60, it was all about compensation. Now, of course, Labour, and I'm just going to come right out with it, Labour promised that they would do something when they were in opposition. They said yes, we were due compensation, and on that promise, a lot of people voted for them, and now they've turned around and it was just like a blunt no, you're not getting compensation. So and a lot of us feel exactly the same way, that they can. What happens if they start picking and choosing now? This is the first time this has ever happened, that they've said no to our recommendation. The government's own watchdog And it galls you because the Ombudsman says that the parliamentarians are due a pay rise, which they're accepting because they have to, because he says they have to get it, but they don't give us compensation, even although the Parliamentary Ombudsman says we have to get it. It makes my blood boil. It really does. And for him to stand there and deny us, and her as well, I'm not saying her name in case.
Do you think you were misled, Anne?
Yes, very much misled. Definitely misleading. Broken a lot of lies. They took away the winter fuel payment for us as well.
Yeah.
It's beyond belief. What
It's not just a singular issue, although it's a huge one. You're going to be able to cope. But on that personal level, I was the first debate we had on the Waspi women was 2016 in Westminster Hall. It was the 1st of February, 2016, and I was 65 that day in Westminster Hall, so I was getting my pension, and all the Waspi women were sitting there weren't.
Yeah.
But the galling thing, it's a great word by the way, the galling thing about that day was one of the Tory MPs opposite us stood up and said that I don't understand why these women didn't know about this, because I read about it in the Financial Times.
That's right.
Like 3-4 years before, like, you know, the kind of thing you read while you're working in the kind of job that you were doing. So when you want to tell us a wee bit about yourself now and just introduce yourself again.
My name's Elspeth Slater, and I'm now 70 years old. I was not aware of the changes in the state pension age, and I have been on a number of demonstrations. When I was working, I remember going on my day off down to London and back up the same day, and then just last year we did the same again. I'm not really in a financial position to do that now because it is expensive to do that. It's a whole day and you've got to feed yourself, etc. But I agree wholeheartedly with everything that Anne says about the maladministration and the PSO recommending that we should get compensation, even although it's nothing like what we'll have lost with not getting a pension for 6 years. And it seems rather hypocritical that the government now can take on board what the PSO says about salary rises for MPs, and we need to do it because the PSO says so, and yet the PSO have said you should be given the Waspi women compensation, and it's, oh no, we can't afford it. So it's very galling. It's very galling to know that there are MPs who are getting clothing allowances that are more than what a pensioner gets in a year for their pension. Any job that I went to that didn't require a uniform, which would be supplied by the employer, you wore your own clothes. You took your own lunches, you know? And this is where a lot of money could be saved, in my opinion. But my opinion, I don't feel really counts anymore, because we're just being brushed aside. And what galls me as well is the fact that we're being pitted against the younger generation. Oh, we can't give you your money because that would be such a burden on the taxpayer. Well, I have news for the government. I am still a taxpayer. I maybe don't pay a lot of tax, but I'm happy to do so because that's my responsibility. But I am a taxpayer, and I really get angry at the fact that they've pitted one against the other. But it seems to be quite typical about don't look at what we're doing or not doing, but look at this and that and pointing the finger in all other directions instead of looking at where they could be saving money as a government. Perhaps if they should go after some of the people who got PPE contracts and the billions that was lost there, the track and trace billions that were lost, maybe they would be able then to afford to pay not just the Waspi women, but we've also got the post office people, and we've also got the infected blood scandal, which is disgustingly 30 odd years old, 30 years old on, and people are still awaiting decisions. It seems that the government can move quickly when demonstrations get out of hand, like at Southport, and they were able to arrest people and quick thingy them through the court system and everything. But it moves very slowly when it comes to people wanting inquiries and the compensation.
Mm-hmm. Well, you're a very good example of us with a woman that's worked all her life, never not worked, had various jobs over a long period of time. You've never been shy. And going back to the point I was making about a Tory MP that reads the Financial Times, I don't know how you're supposed to pick up on these things while you've got 2 or 3 jobs, raising a family, grandchildren, and doing all the other things that you're probably all looking forward to, bringing up, looking after children in your older age. And that's the reason governments have an obligation, a serious obligation to look after people, and they've failed again. It's only, I think the point you're touching on is sometimes when it requires public humiliation to actually get some people to turn around and take notice, especially when it's their public humiliation. So can we move on to yourself now and tell us a wee bit about yourself?
My name's Heidi Said, and I only found out 4 years before I was 60 that there would be no pension at 60. I worked in local authority for many years, and I retrained when I was 60. I knew I couldn't survive for an additional 6 years on local authority, so I managed to leave work and retrain. All my plans for retirement and what I intended doing when I retired was to travel. And as I say, 4 years before retirement was due, I remember going into work and saying I can't do another 10 years in here, because that's what it was. It was another 6 years that you were being asked to do. The fact that we've paid into national insurance contributions for many, many years, and it was a pension that we worked towards, and now they're talking about it as being a benefit, which it's not a benefit. And I think a lot of the national insurance money, or some of it, has been already spent, been taken out for other things. So I feel that when people look at elderly or older people and decide, that they don't merit their pensions, they forget that we've had a lifetime of putting in to prepare for those pensions in advance. So there's so many things going on just now. But my first demonstration was Waspi, was a march in Glasgow, and I took my pot and my wooden spoon with me. And my wooden spoon cracked down the middle when someone talked about who was in the government at the time, and I hit my pot that hard it split. So I still use that wooden spoon. It's still in the house. I'm quite proud of it.
You should auction that one.
It's just it's how the government's looking on Waspi women. It's the gaslighting that's going on. They're telling us that we knew about it. And I know I've not actually met a single person who was born in the 50s who did know about it. We should have been told in 1995. The Ombudsman saying, is it 20 odd months or something? They're saying that we should have been told 20 odd months earlier. I wanted to know in 1995. There were 2 adverts went out into some of the papers which I would never have read. One of them had a dog in it, and that was what they advertised.
What does that mean?
There was 2 adverts went out into newspapers. That's what the government did, to let people know that they were going to be working until they were 65. And one of them was a picture of a dog, and they were in, I can't remember the newspapers they were in.
I can't remember the newspapers, but the television
Times
ads
or something.
But the advert on the telly was 2 collie dogs, and one dog was talking to her about how what you're going to do with your retirement now, Bessie, and that was supposed to tell us about the changes, but nothing was absolutely nothing said about changes. And in fact, people keep saying, oh, you should have been checking on your pension, but see in 2015, on the official DWP website, it still told you that women retired at 60 and men retired at 65, and they said it was an oversight, but that oversight caused millions of us to change pension plans, because you were basing that and even lawyers and divorce courts were basing the woman's earnings and maintenance, or whatever you want to call it, until they were 60.
Because I bought a house in 2003
Mm-hmm.
based on retiring at 60,
Mhm.
and nothing was mentioned then at all. So the lawyers didn't know about it. Nobody that was involved financially seemed to know that we would have to wait till we're 60, 65 and 66. The governments, consecutive governments, it wasn't just Conservative, it was Labour as well.
Mm-hmm.
One person was seen to be rubbing his hands saying we've never made as much money as we have. 3.8 million women times £50,000. That's how much money that they saved, and I don't know where that money went. You know, so and I know that they're saying 1,000 to 2,950, but that I think it should be more than that, because it's not just about men having been us being equal. We didn't live an equal life. We didn't live an equal life to men. I remember getting married and my father-in-law was appalled when I said I was going to get my own bank account. You know, women didn't go and get mortgages, and you worked, you brought up your children, you had your part-time jobs round about that. The men got the pensions, and so there's a lot of women through the years, like people like of my mum's age whose pensions are less.
Yeah.
There's just so much.
I'm a great stato, so I try not to be too statistical because this is about human lives. But I think this stat does actually bear, well, two stats I want to mention. They reckon women retire on average £123,000 less than men, which I think puts it into perspective. And just as another perspective, the Ombudsman's recommendation for compensation, which when we were at Westminster, we were arguing was way below what it should have been, 1,000 to 2,950 as a single one-off payment, had that been approved, pales it in significance to the MP's £2,500 a year, every year. You know, so putting that in perspective, how they didn't have the gumption to vote for justice that they'd all been, well, almost all of them had been claiming for years, is sadly shocking.
It was fascinating when we were at Westminster and you were talking about the campaigns and the amount of women that turned up for them, took over Parliament Square, even though it was chucking at a rain that day and going back and forward across, shutting. I think it was probably more effective than the tractors a couple of weeks ago. But I think that the disappointing thing is that people promised that they'd do something about it.
Yes.
And the ABC would do it, and I believed it as well. I thought, well, we'll be a change of government. And I'm not getting into the political side of it, but the big word was change. And then nothing. In fact, I mean, it must be so heartbreaking.
It was.
It was. I feel used by those that have promised that and then taken it away. You know.
Well, so you should, but people from all over the country came to these rallies, and you're right to say this. You spend a lot of time, a lot of money in, train fares, cost of living in London, buying a sandwich is no cheap, And I've never even mentioned the beer, but everything's expensive. Organising everything behind the scenes, your family lives to just make yourselves do this. But the rallies themselves were amazing to watch, and the one they had down at the Kelpies at the lakes was great as well. Everything was good, and you felt as if you were getting somewhere with it.
That's right.
Yeah, did we not also go through to Holyrood at one time as well?
I've been
Yeah, because I was through there with my flag.
Yeah, well, then, and there was a demonstration recently. There's a video we could just play with a clip.
Forest mitigation?
No, further down the Holyrood demo.
Okay.
And I apologise again that we can't.
Where do we want it? No. What do we want? Compensation. Where do we want it? No. What do we want? Compensation. Where do we want it? No. What do we want? Compensation. Where do we want it? No. What do we want? Compensation. Where do we want it? No.
That you would have had from that, you're spending it in local communities. You're visiting shops because you've got that kind of local community feeling about you, that horizontal thing where you know that you've gone to see someone in a shop. She'll probably, when she gets kept in a job or the guy gets kept in a job, that money's getting spread about again. Now, what do you think? How do you think that's affected you in this case?
Well, it just means that I don't really have much of a life now, you know. I downsized 3 years ago because I had an upstairs flat, and I thought, you get 68, you know, you better think about moving to something on the ground floor. And I've got something that's just walking distance from the town centre. It's got security entry. And I had a little cushion because I downsized. And I've not even been in that house 3 years, and that cushion has gone because of the cost of living, you know, and I've had to do things like get a new boiler and a new shower and just ordinary things that most people have to do in their lives, but you can't do it when you don't have.
I think that's the important thing is that when you get to the retiring age, you don't think I'll go and get another job, I'll do something else, because you haven't got the earning capacity.
I no longer have a car because it failed its MOT. And it was going to cost a lot of money to get it through its MOT with no guarantee that there was other things that wouldn't be coming up. And it was just, I couldn't do it.
Constant pressure.
So, you know, I'm not as independent as I would like to be, you know. I've now got a hobby that I did for 30 years that I'm no longer able to go to because I've not got a car, because there isn't a bus service to Knockhill Racing Circuit. I only went 5 Sundays a year. But I loved it, and I did it for over 30 years. Now I can't go.
What was that?
Motorbike racing.
Oh.
Yes, biker chick. but seriously, if I didn't have a bus pass, which means that I can get on any buses locally, in fact, within Scotland, and if I didn't have a council go card, which allows me to go swimming at any of their pools, I wouldn't have that. And those are my only 2 hobbies. One's already gone. And if they ever decided, you have to pay for your buses and your entrance, because entrance into the swimming is £5.20. Now I'm going 2-3 times a week.
You're making a real good point of you. The reality of life is that your lifestyle's been affected, your mental health starts getting affected.
Physical health.
You think, why am I having to deal with these pressures now? You know, and then all these other things you're talking about, you have to think about a budget and a budget and a budget. So anything you've had to change that you didn't think you would change?
Because I couldn't plan for my retirement in the 4 years that I had left. I had to go and retrain. So I paid money out to retrain, to do counselling, which is what they told us to do. Oh, you need to retrain and keep working to your whatever. So I did that. But I also did some volunteering work. My parents, my mum fell, she broke her hip. She's in her 90s. She's 97 now. My son doesn't keep well. I was taking my granddaughter, I was still caring for her every weekend. She was coming to stay. So this balancing act, along with, I also took a small job on as a carer, and I went out to do my first 12-hour shift and realised I wasn't physically fit enough to do it. So then I just, instead of going on a big holiday when I left work, which is what I was going to do, I had to wait quite a long time, because I then had to start kind of like penny pension, which I hadn't planned for, because my mortgage was still running on for another 5 years. So, but I knew that I had to leave my job because I couldn't survive another 10 years at it. So it impacts your whole family, because you're given bits of yourself and working and kind of studying and training, as I was at the time, and volunteering, and it's like you're fragmented. Instead of like leaving work, and so families suffer. You know, you can't do the childcare you might have. To me, the economy, the money that they took off the Waspies, all that money was taken out of the economy, and I reckon that's why. Well, we laugh about it, but Marks and Spencer's in Falkirk closed down. You know, all that money was taken out of the high street over the course of 6 years, which was a lot of spending money that was removed. So, anyway, there's a lot of more awful stories than mine. You know, I know that.
Have you found similar stories of all the other Waspy women that you've met?
Yeah. I mean, one person. She was separated from her husband never knew that she was going to be not retiring at 60, and everything went through. You know, like there was no money there out of his pension or anything because it was still hidden even at that time, just 2 years before a friend had her leg amputated. Her husband had to keep, she was young, but she couldn't go back out to work. So her husband had to keep working because she never got her pension at 60. So he had to keep working longer to keep the two of them. So, and then people that have lost their homes, people have lost their homes.
Yep.
You know, if their husband died, for example, or they divorced, or things happened, or they lost their job. People that were nurses, teachers, they left their work to maybe care for somebody, and then discovered that they weren't getting their pension at 60, and then were left having to clamber around to try and get other work. They had left really good jobs, you know, thinking. So it wasn't just, there were so many people. It hit so many people.
I don't think there's any families that haven't been affected by this.
And then, of course, there's the women who didn't even live long enough.
Yes, there's that.
Of
Those
course.
that have died already, and that one dies, what is it, every 13 minutes?
What about you, Anne? You've led the campaign very well locally, and you've been really excellent at putting things together, keeping people together. And sometimes you must be in total despair, I would think, sometimes, about despite everything that you were doing.
Well, there's been times when I've just thought, I just want to give up because I'd lost the will to fight. But once I kind of took a wee step back, and then it was straight back in again, because I thought, no, they're not getting away with this. Why should they get away with it? And it's just as what Wendy's saying. I mean, everybody talks about the financial impact, but there was the emotional, physical impact, you know, because people actually went into the depths of despair, and we know people that's took their own lives because they couldn't cope, you know. And I think that's absolutely disgusting, and that's laid firmly at the government's door, you know. And the physical toll, and then what happens? They're trying to save all this money, but it ends up all these women and their families, because families were affected as well. It's a ripple effect. The pebble goes in the middle, but the ripples reach the sides. And then there's the burden on the doctors. People going because they're depressed, or the physical ailments that they suddenly came up with, the sore backs, and that's all kind of manifested through stress and anxiety, depression, and that's laid a burden on the NHS.
Good point.
There's the tablets, the medication, physiotherapy, you name it. It's had a knock-on effect.
You're so right. I mean, the buzzword at the moment is we're trying to get everybody to be more productive, and actually these things actually make you less productive because you're. And this other word that they come out all the time about, oh, people are resilient. Well, you shouldn't have to be resilient. You know, you've been resilient all your life in bringing up families, and all the good times and all the bad times. But I think this has been the biggest single blow that I've ever heard. The human life consequences of what you're speaking about. Everything you're talking about, your local communities, local shops shutting down. People, I can talk about my own mother who was 97 when she died, but she was born and bred in Denny. She would get up, she brought 7 kids up, she would get up in the morning. My dad would kindle the fire, as they said, and do all that. But she went from there, she would go to your local church, she would go to the post office, she would go to the co-op, and that was their life. And everybody was speaking, had that great community feeling. And I really, and they had a hard life, you know, there was no question about it. Nobody gave you anything. You had to work for everything that you had to get. And you would have thought, in the tradition that we grew up in, my own family in a Labour background, socialist background, you'd have thought we'd come through all of that. You thought you would have gained and got through all of that. And I don't remember ever hearing anything as bad as it. Certainly Martyn and I, since we've been at Westminster, there's things that we've had to deal with that just break your heart. And again, Martyn and I have hosted the Waspi women in Westminster when we had our offices there, and you can't help but be impressed by their attitude and the way you kept campaigning and campaigning. And this just beggars belief what's happened to you again.
I know.
It's almost like, though, what government don't get is when people started living longer, we were the sandwich generation. Like, we were sandwiched between caring for older people and younger generation. And then if your own children were unwell, you cared for that generation as well. So we are like a kind of sandwich generation, because all those people that are living longer, you actually putting caring hours into that generation as well as trying to manage everything else too. So, and so when you're not able to provide that care or not volunteering, the community does suffer, because these were the women who would have done volunteering in the community. If they'd had the pension, they would have been running the wee coffee shops or whatever, they would have been doing whatever.
A feeling of self-worth, peace of mind when you go to bed at night, maybe you're actually done something worthwhile, you looked after the grandkids or whatever else, and our partners or sisters, family, whatever. But instead of that, you probably, unless you've been fortunate to have another income, you know, you don't have that peace of mind anymore. And it's ridiculous, you know, isn't it? Public money, at the end of the day, it's public money.
Yeah.
It's not the government's money, it's public money. It's the government that should distribute how that money is used. And as you said earlier, they didn't seem to have pursued the things like the PPE and all that mismanagement with the same vigour. You were just told, nah, you're not getting this.
Between the three of us, we probably
lost
between the three of us, we'll have lost £150,000 between the three of us.
We've got a few comments coming in. We've not had any questions yet, but just to quickly go through a couple of comments making that point. Eddie Wolfie is saying they know a woman who is looking for 46,000 in compensation because that's what she lost. That seems to be in keeping, and that is typical of the figures certainly that my office heard from women that were affected. Keith Barclay has sort of asked a question. He said, if the Ombudsman's finding was in favour of the Waspies, is there no way of legally challenging the government's decision? Which is an interesting question, and certainly it's unprecedented in my recollection of a recommendation being flatly ignored.
I know.
And Hashbury Stumbles commented, born in the 1950s was her generation, and basically women have been ripped off by Westminster. That's very, very true. I used in the 9 years I was at Westminster, used 3 of the opportunities I got for PNQs to challenge directly on this issue, and we just got flannel, you know. So I share your frustration, because it just needed a bit of political will, and I think they missed a wonderful opportunity during COVID, because that would have been the time when they were trying to they could have exceeded the largesse, taking some of the women out of the employment market, which would have supported younger folk in jobs. I think it could have been a win-win then, and I challenge certainly Rishi Sunak in his days as Chancellor on that, but he wasn't biting either. And you just
there was another point made at the time as well, that women having to work on longer was that preventing younger people coming into work. You know,
that was an argument as well.
That was made time and time again, you know, and they were then given the opportunity, should have been given the opportunity to provide that income to allow people to retire. And you know, you're getting to the end of your life, you think, well, why am I having to think about this? And I think we're probably, as it is, our pensions, Martin, you might know this better than me, but I think our pensions are the lowest in the whole of Europe.
They're certainly the lowest, well, in North West Europe certainly, and we don't fare well on the average on that at all.
I know.
Yeah. But you were saying something when we first came in about the financial advisor person that said how much time you needed. Like, they're saying that we should have had 2 years more notice, but I don't think that's enough either. I think the Ombudsman's got it wrong too, sorry, but I do think they have. But you were saying that you needed to save so much per year.
£1,500 a month to save if I wanted to get the equivalent of the state pension when I was 60. I had about a year and a half to do that.
And I had 4 years to make mine up.
I know.
So it's like total disregard.
Yes.
Total disregard.
Well, one of the MPs at the time says, well, if you just ignore them, they'll go away. That's what
right.
you said.
Yeah, that's
And we
right.
know who that was. But
I
we're
can't
not
remember
mentioning
his name.
Ian
Ah,
Duncan
well,
Smith.
aye.
I haven't heard that thing about the ducks. I find that quite,
Yes,
that's like
You can
somebody
get it
being-
on YouTube. See if you look
I'm going to have a
YouTube.
look at that. I've
It's
never
two,
heard of
it's
that.
two
Two collie
dogs.
dogs.
It's the back of the dogs. It's, you only see the back of the dogs.
Somebody obviously thinks this is funny and clever and smart.
And probably got paid a lot of money for it.
Exactly.
Yes.
If you got the contract for that, who was the marketing people that got that?
And it wasn't somewhere like the Financial Times or something, and
Yeah,
And
there's
if
an
you
inch
bring it up
column
on
in the
children,
business papers.
yeah.
Mm.
Well, I only did the crossword in the Financial Times. Sorry.
Of course you did.
I was looking for Calvin and Hobbes.
But there's another interesting point, because Wendy was saying about living longer, but there's a lot of places where not, and the age is actually coming down. The
Well,
life
life
expectancy,
expectancy.
the life expectancy, and in some areas you're lucky if the life expectancy is about 70.
Can you tell us where that?
Well, I did have, I know Glasgow, because it's in areas of great poverty, Manchester,
Social deprivation.
you know, areas of deprivation, and the life expectancy is actually coming down. But you know what else is coming down? Is the healthy life expectancy.
Yeah.
And in women, especially in the areas of deprivation, the healthy life expectancy is about 58 years old, and you're getting asked to work to 66 in poor health. And they're talking about raising the age, the pensions again.
It's
So
not just
it's-
us.
No,
It's our
Children
children,
that's
the
coming up.
grandchildren, and they want to work them
today.
to their dead. And they're not wanting them to have any kind of retirement at all.
No.
It's a bit dependent on the areas, and that's where it's not fair as well. Someone might only live till they're 60 in one area, but 90 in another as the years go on. And it's so unfair.
Discrimination.
Well, there's a
I mean,
lot of
it
the
has-
youngsters nowadays are never ever going to have the chance to be homeowners, like I was. But as I said, I was only a homeowner at 19 because I was getting married. I wouldn't have got a mortgage on my own. That was the discriminatory part of being a woman and having only a third of the salary that my husband had.
And every penny you earn over 12,750 is taxed
Yes,
as well.
because I pay tax because I have a very small
Yeah.
private pension,
Yeah,
and I have to pay tax on it.
But the thing is, I keep saying that pensioners don't pay tax. And if you're on the basic pension, you don't, because it is just slightly under the personal allowance. However, you pay council tax, you pay full duty, you pay VAT.
Exactly.
If you decide to go for a drink or buy a bottle of whiskey or we have a bottle of whiskey, or you pay tax on that. So to say that we don't pay tax is a myth. Every single person in this country pays tax.
Even when you die, you pay tax.
You pay tax. Everybody pays tax.
It's another interesting thing as well, but even the practicalities of if you want to go on holiday somewhere, when they're now hitting you because you're getting older, they're saying you're going to have to pay extra, pay extra. And all of these things you've just described, when you should be still in decent, robust health, and then they're asking all these questions to find a way to get you to pay more money. That's all it is, it's just to find a way.
Yeah.
And any excuse of something happens to you, which could happen to anybody.
And then you've got a big excess
Correct.
if you do put in a claim.
It's not just that money, it's all the other things that's added in.
And your car insurance is the same, you have a big excess.
It's got road tax.
Because when I lost the use of my car last year, there was one going for quite cheaply, and I thought, oh well, I'll have a wee look, and took a note of the registration and popped it into the insurance company, and it was actually going to cost me more than the car was worth just to insure it. So, it was a no-brainer.
Yeah, it's not a happy, healthy place to be at this moment in time.
No.
How do you see things? How would you change things, Anne?
How would I change things?
What would you do to change things?
Well, first of all, I would go down to Westminster and take over. And I would look at other policies and they get ripped up and flung out.
Yep.
And it would get run on the same way as a household budget.
Yes.
and money would be set aside for X amount of things.
And the
And
national insurance money would stay in the national insurance
the
pot.
same way as when I first started getting married, and I had money going into this pot for whatever, and that's how you budget it.
Yep.
And I think that's how the money in this country should be run. And all that money that PPI and all the rest of it, and I mean, that should all be reclaimed back.
Maybe we should have,
You know,
a production. Do you know how in most people are told, well, if you want a wage rise, you need to be more productive.
yeah,
Well, maybe we should do that for the MPs.
well, there's that to it as well.
I mean, I worked for a local authority, and I can't remember how many years ago it was, but they stopped us being able to claim lunch money when we were training, which I quite agreed with. I didn't even used to claim a mileage, to be fair. But when I see the expenses that people get, like for food, and I see, you know, how much people get when they go to the House of Lords, and why can't folk just take a sandwich, because that's what we had to do when we got our money stopped, you know, with local authorities. So there's it just feels like there's this divide.
Entitlement, I think.
Yes.
And there was a group of millionaires or billionaires or whatever, very rich people, got together and wrote a letter to the government and offered to pay extra tax. Whoever this group of people were, and they offered to pay extra tax, and then that's not happening. Is it? They're not taxing the people who should be taxed. I can't remember who it was.
The only reference I can think of was back when we were looking at the energy costs. Some of the energy firms, oil companies, had said that they could have paid a higher windfall, and why they didn't, you know, hit them, because they made excess profits, not through their efforts or labour, but just because of costs rising.
But then when it's owned by shareholders, you know, and the shareholders are making like a lot of money because the cost of energy has gone up, and the shareholders are the winners, and we're the ones that are actually funding the shareholders.
That's been, and Martyn will back me up on this, but that's been a bone of contention with me, particularly for a long while. I think in Scotland, where we're energy rich, we should have, I just called it our own Scot grid, where we distribute our own energy instead of selling it down to England and then getting charged more for it to come back. We should have our own. We've got Scottish Water, which is publicly owned. I don't see why anybody like BlackRock, who run the national grid, God knows who BlackRock are and who owns them nowadays. But the national grid is not a national institution; it's owned by individual shareholders. And we produce energy and get charged more for it to get back. If we're going back to your way of thinking, Anne, and I'd love to see that happening, by the way. But if you could actually get to a state where you said, actually, in Scotland, you produce your own energy, and when you get to a certain age, your energy is cheaper because you've already paid into it, and you distribute it accordingly, and it should be reduced, not increased. You're at the mercy of people, and that Matt and I had a discussion, I think maybe 7, 8 years ago, with people that were physics, they understood. One of them actually said that he understood the movement of electrons and neutrons easier than he understood the national grid. And he was a physics guy that was involved in it. He didn't understand it. It's so complicated. Do you remember that conversation? And it could be simplified and owned by public utilities. The people of Scotland should own 51% and work in harmony. That's what I think we should be doing. And instead of that, it's going into some pipeline, it's getting transferred away somewhere else.
And then pipe it back up.
Correct. It's nutty. And I believe that, I hope to goodness that enough said, I'm not going into that. But I just feel
the energy, I don't
it's
know.
not going away, the energy.
But mine's more than double than what I used to pay.
You're getting
65
crucified. And we shouldn't be in that position.
No.
Mine only used to be £65 a month, and this month it was 132.
One of our leader in Westminster, Stephen Flynn, he put it for the Scottish National Party point of view. He said we have the energy but not the power, and I think that's summed up quite well. But we need to give it a name, you know, like Scotland, something like that, and say this should be ours for us to distribute, and make it a community ownership thing that we'll
Yes.
use and use it accordingly. And I can't think of a reason. I can think of a reason why it'll never happen.
There's a lot of shareholders that are making a lot of money.
You wouldn't agree with that, exactly.
I think while we're on the
Always a great
Probably on
example.
the subject of Stephen Flynn, I think that's probably worth noting that he had his 10-minute rule bill on the Waspi
Yes,
compensation,
yes,
which
yes.
encouragingly passed the first hurdle
Yes.
without any dissent, because anyone that was opposed to it just sat on their hands.
Mhm.
But, and I think that's symbolic, but what we've got to do is keep the pressure on government, because these bills only go anywhere if government picks them up. So, it's made the first hurdle. People need to keep campaigning, keep that pressure on the Labour Party, because they're now in government, and hopefully get a result. Now, we've seen, and I'm going to ask my glamorous assistant to play the mitigation clip. So apologies, this is the Liz Kendall during the announcement on the Ombudsman report in response to Kirsty Blackman, basically said, if you want to do something different in Scotland, you have the power to mitigate it. And just so we're...
If the Honourable Lady wants a different approach, then the Scottish, the SNP government in Scotland can do a different approach. Using the £4.9 billion settlement we have provided, the biggest ever in the history of devolution, if they want to take a different approach.
Yeah, and then if we play the other clip, and I'll just read out so that everybody can see, which tells us that they either are deliberately trying to mislead people, which obviously is my bias and what I'm thinking, or they genuinely have no idea what devolved powers are, because, and I'll read you the key line. This is from the explanatory notes from the Scotland Act 2016. This is more easy to read than the legislation, but it explains it. Section 28, the power to create new benefits will not extend to pensions, as the Smith Commission report specifically states that all aspects of pensions should remain reserved. So the Scottish Parliament doesn't have the power to do it. So we've got to get that pressure at Westminster.
It's flammable, isn't it? It's kind of gaslighting. It's almost, and it's lying.
Yeah, it is.
lying.
Yeah.
And it's sad that Labour MPs who do support Waspi, and there are a lot of them, are being told
Being shut down.
not to say anything. And that's wrong, because when we vote for someone, they're working for us.
Yeah.
They're not working
Absolutely
for their
right.
party. And that's what the governments of the days forget.
And you had a point you were wanting to come in on, I think.
I'd just like to point out that there was a petition to get a debate in Parliament, and it had to get to the 100,000, and it's reached 157,000. And now there's a debate going to be taking place on March the 17th in Parliament on the Waspi issue. So it's about every Waspi lady out there emailing, tagging their MP, regardless of which party that MP belongs to.
Yes.
To get them to say yes.
Well, I had the privilege of serving on the petitions committee for a number of years, and it was one of the most enjoyable committees to be on, because you got into everything, right? And some of it was bizarre, like the shape of a football on the road signs, anyway. But these are real issues, and how it works, and this is important. So I think I emphasise the point you've just made. Everybody affected, whether they're directly affected or it's a family or a friend, should be contacting their MP saying, this debate's happening, please go along and make a comment.
Yes.
Ask the minister a question, because the minister's put on the spot to answer. Now, it doesn't suddenly get a result, but they have to answer in the public domain. So you want that pressure to ask them as many of these questions as you can. And then that's the next stage of the campaign, to keep the pressure on. And, a nice easy question that folks should be asking is, will they support that bill that Stephen Flynn introduced at the next stage?
And
Because there's the jail card. And
in the Ombudsman's report, they decided to pick 6 people out of 3.8 million women. And that's what that report's mainly been based on, and it's not really true, is it?
And I would just like to say, if you're not a member of Waspi, then please do join.
Yes.
Any last comments? And that's a great comment to make, by the way. Any last comments before we close for the evening, Anne?
No, I'm quite happy how we've discussed.
Okay.
Thank you very
And
much for
thank you
allowing
for
us,
asking us to come
for
along.
allowing
Appreciate
us
it.
to be here.
Well, it has been a pleasure again to meet you once again and to try and broadcast the issues. This is our first time back.
Yeah, thank you very much for being guinea pigs for our first live experience. Anytime we've done this before, we were set up, we just left the equipment in place, we came in, switched it on, and apart from, we always had sound issues, so that's nothing new, but we couldn't hear it before. But anyway, we'll work that one out, hopefully before the next one.
At least I'm not getting rained upon tonight.
Well, that was, yes.
Not like the time when we're done at Westminster.
And for those watching, that was indoors in Westminster, on the third floor. So we were,
That's right.
we weren't even on the top floor, we were on the third floor.
We were wet when we went in, we were still wet when we came back out.
Never been back to that office.
Did you know?
No, never got back in again.
So I think that just leaves us to thank everybody for watching, for the comments that we've had tonight. And if people have ideas for future shows, do let us know who you'd like to hear or what you'd like discussed, because we're quite relaxed. So we just want to get through the technical part and have a good conversation or a blether, because blethering is a bit we enjoy. We've had a question, can we cover Grangemouth next? Well, we can certainly do that in one of the upcoming shows, so we can get as a speaker.
What do they mean by Grangemouth? The situation of
I'm making an assumption that they mean the whole situation with the petrochemicals and INEOS and PetroINEOS and what have we. So, and then there's future skills and how we do the green
that should
transition.
be very interesting.
I think there's so many aspects there. We could probably do a series of shows on Grangemouth.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thanks very much again, ladies, and for everybody who's watching. On behalf of Martyn and I and the ladies of Waspi, thanks everybody for watching, and tune in again next week. I hope to have Alan Smith, who was a former colleague along with you. Hopefully he'll be speaking on European matters to us and see how Scotland might fit back into the European scene. And I think we'd all like to see that. Now we've seen the consequences of Brexit, the impact of it, and
35 billion for NHS, so
350 million a week or something it was.
As much as that.
Yeah, something like that.
Forgotten quite quickly. But thanks very much, everybody. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.